My partner's a narcissist, decoding the label and finding hope in couples therapy. If I had a nickel for every time someone walked into my office declaring, my partner's a narcissist, I'd be swimming in a pool of coins. Often, they're hoping for validation, understandably. They want a quick diagnosis that absolves them of the responsibility of changing their side of the street and often gives them permission to leave the relationship without guilt. The term narcissist is thrown around casually these days, but it's important to remember that true narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a complex clinical diagnosis. And while some individuals may indeed meet the criteria, many others just exhibit narcissistic traits without having a full-blown disorder. Labeling someone rarely helps if you're committed to staying in the relationship and working on the dynamics that brought your relationship to a bad place. However, understanding the hallmarks of narcissism, like preoccupation with status, difficulty with empathy, a desire for control, just understanding narcissistic traits, it really can be valuable for navigating these challenges in relationships. So if your partner or if you yourself may be on the narcissistic end of the spectrum, couples therapy can be incredibly effective if both people are willing to work on the relationship, even if, again, those narcissistic tendencies are pretty strong. So with Gottman method couples therapy at our practice, Couples Counseling ATL, we also use a little bit of what's called relational life therapy, created by Terry Real. These approaches offer powerful tools for working with narcissistic dynamics. We don't shy away from addressing problematic behaviors like selfishness. We also recognize that everyone possesses strengths and weaknesses in a relationship. So even if one person, again, is a little bit more on the narcissistic end of the spectrum, it's important to recognize that both people always can work on their side of the street. As a Gottman therapist, I'm trained to be direct about the impact of narcissistic behavior on a relationship. We don't tiptoe around issues or enable abusive language. Instead, we confront these patterns gently but firmly, focusing on a narcissistic sort of internal process and pain. Encouraging a person who is acting in such a way to envision this 2.0 sort of version of themselves, what do they care about, what do they value, and to really try to strive for that is almost always important for work in couples therapy to go well. Obviously, we have a very thorough assessment process. We get to know each person very well, and then also together as a couple. And knowing what they care about, what they value is important for, highlighting how personal growth will not only benefit the relationship, but also personally themselves and their happiness if they're able to be kind of in line with their own values. If you say that you really want your marriage to work out, are you willing to do what's effective to make it work? Are you humble enough to, be open to learning, to changing, to doing what works, even if it's not how you've been operating? By avoiding power struggles too, and refusing to be intimidated by anger or, kind of explosive behavior. We really do also try to create a safe space for change and healing. It's only if a person is willing to be directed and willing to be taught can we proceed with couples therapy. If narcissism is too out of control, or if a person really is just completely unwilling to accept any influence from a therapist, couples therapy is not going to help. And so obviously there are some extreme ends of the narcissistic spectrum that will not benefit from couples therapy. If someone thinks that they are God's gift and that they don't need any change and that they're perfect and that their partner just needs to change, that's probably not, couples therapy is probably not going to work. Even with gentle but firm confrontation, if someone's completely unwilling to address their own side of the street, couples therapy won't work. But again, if someone's not completely at the very far end of narcissism, and if they are just, struggling with some of those traits, but they're a little bit willing to learn, you could potentially see something working out, like with one couple that I worked with. We'll call them Lisa and Mark, where Mark displayed strong narcissistic traits and Lisa felt constantly criticized and devalued and controlled. But through couples therapy, and really joining with both of them and, seeing the best of them, and they both, knew that I knew them well. I really liked much about both of them, and they started to trust me and trust my competence and that I cared about them, Mark really began to recognize the impact of his behavior on Lisa and on their relationship. He began to see kind of that if he continued down this path, their relationship was going to end, and that ultimately he was going to be less happy. He was going to be on his own, still blaming Lisa and still believing that there was nothing wrong with himself. And so through a little bit of humility and beginning to work on his side of the street, he started to understand that his own underlying insecurities and fears and past history were all contributing to the ways that he used narcissism as a defense mechanism, and that he really was seeming overly confident all the time, but he wasn't, and that he often used rage just as a way to have control and to be the loudest in the room. It frequently intimidated Lisa, and she would often just kind of defer to him, but he recognized that this power imbalance was really leading to Lisa wanting out. She was tired of this dynamic, and he had been unwilling to change for so long that she was ready to walk. And sometimes that moment of reality where you're able to look at the future, that if I continue, this is what's going to potentially be lost, that can be very highly motivating. So sometimes the crisis of a relationship almost ending can really present a window of opportunity for people. And so for Mark, thankfully, he was able to see the door open and was able to walk through and willing to do some work with some very consistent effort and support, and also being held accountable, using a lot of humor, is able to kind of learn how to laugh at himself and his own tendencies, and was able to even kind of start to see some of the sabotaging behaviors that previously just kind of was the water he swam in. He was able to see that these knee-jerk reactions and tendencies are well ingrained, but that they're not unchangeable, that through some real consistent effort, you can learn how to stop the knee-jerk reaction and make different choices in a relationship, so that it's no longer all about me and myself and what I want, but that we start to share power. We start to, have more empathy for our partner. We start to, really not just think, what do I want, what's good for me, but what do you want, what's good for you, what's good for us, and having more of an us mentality rather than a me and then myself and I. And so once Mark and Lisa were able to work through some of these power differentials and some of these really destructive narcissistic tendencies on Mark's part, Lisa was also able to work on her side of the street, that she had been far too flexible for too long, that she hadn't spoken up about, her own preferences, and she hadn't vocalized and put her foot down enough. She had been way too flexible. And so that also was really important for her to learn how to change. And this created much more balanced and fulfilling partnership of equals, of, a team. And Lisa no longer wanted out, and the marriage became a lot more stable and happy for both of them. So if you're struggling in a relationship with a partner, who is, showing some signs of narcissism, just know that there's hope. That if there's any chance that they're willing to look in the mirror and work on themselves, as long as you are also willing to look at yourself in the mirror, couples therapy really can provide you with the tools and the guidance that you need to navigate those challenges, to create a healthier, more balanced, more loving connection. But what's critical, if this is a tendency, is that you have a couples therapist who is direct, who is also caring, who's competent, who's been trained in a research-based couples therapy like the Gottman method. It doesn't hurt to have other sorts of couples therapy training, but the research basis of ours is paramount. And having a couples therapist who's not going to just sit back and watch you fight and then take a check at the end of the session, you need someone who's directive, who shows you both that they care and that they are willing to be really active and to get in there and to help you both to see what you're doing that's sabotaging the relationship, and to help both of you to really be able to express your feelings and emotions in a vulnerable way that's not attacking, that doesn't weaponize each other's feelings, to create that sort of safety. That's critical. And sometimes too, couples therapy, again, just can't work if somebody is not willing to be directed. So if the narcissism is too strong, if it leads to a complete lack of empathy or an utter unwillingness to change their side of the street, couples therapy cannot help. But if you are in that situation, individual therapy still can help. It can help you to feel supported. It can help you to not feel crazy or gaslit. And that can also be very, very helpful. Visit us at counselingatl.com if you want to learn more, or if you want to schedule a free 20-minute video consultation. You could also sign up for our next couples workshop if you're looking for foundational skills for a healthy relationship. But you deserve a healthy relationship. So if you're struggling again with any narcissistic tendencies going on in your relationship, it's great to learn more. It's not healthy typically to label someone as a narcissist, but you really can tell a couple's therapist, especially if you're meeting individually like we do in the Gottman assessment, you can tell them about your concerns. Doesn't help to say it in front of your partner, but it can be helpful to say it when you're doing your individual meeting with your therapist. Thanks so much.